Have you ever felt that sharp sting when someone questions your intentions? And before you know it, you're defending yourself, explaining every detail, hoping they'll finally see who you really are? You try to sound calm, but inside it burns. You replay every word later, wondering why you even bothered, because no matter what you said, it never felt enough. They still saw what they wanted to see, and you were left holding the weight of their misunderstanding. It's exhausting, isn't it? The need to be understood, to be seen as good, to prove that your heart was never the problem. But here's the truth no one tells you. Every time you defend yourself, you hand away your power. You think you're protecting your reputation, your dignity, your peace. But in reality, you're building your prison one explanation at a time. Because the moment you try to prove your worth, you've already accepted their judgment. You've stepped into their frame, and now your truth has to fight for space inside their story. You feel it, don't you? That quiet pressure to justify, to correct, to explain what you meant. It's human. We all crave to be understood. But the moment you start defending yourself, you stop being free. You start performing. You shift from being the author of your story to being a character in theirs. And that's when the real damage begins. Not because they misunderstood you, but because you started believing you had to make them understand. There's something deeply psychological about this moment. When you defend yourself, your brain interprets it as danger, a threat to your identity. The need to justify becomes an emotional reflex, a survival mechanism wired into your nervous system. It's not weakness, it's conditioning. But what if that reflex is the very thing that keeps you small? What if the need to defend is what stops you from standing in your true power? Here's the paradox. When you stop defending yourself, you don't become weaker. You become untouchable. The silence that follows their accusations doesn't show defeat. It shows depth. It confuses the ones who attack you because they expect resistance. They want to pull you into their chaos. But when you don't engage, when you simply stand there, still, unshaken, they see something they can't control. And people fear what they can't control. Your calm becomes power. Your silence becomes strength. The world doesn't teach this. It teaches noise. It teaches reaction. It teaches you to always respond, to fight for your image, to make them see the real you. But the real you doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be known by you. Because the truth doesn't need defense. It just needs time. The people meant to understand you will, and the ones who don't never mattered as much as you thought they did. The irony is that when you stop defending yourself, the world starts listening differently. Your energy changes. You no longer speak from fear but from conviction. You no longer chase validation, you embody certainty. And in that space you find peace, the kind that doesn't depend on who believes you or who doesn't. It's the peace that comes from finally realizing you never owed anyone an explanation for being who you are. You've probably spent years trying to be understood, trying to explain your heart, trying to prove your intentions. But what if this constant defense has been your greatest distraction? What if it's kept you from the quiet, unshakable power that comes from simply knowing yourself? Because when you know who you are, you no longer react, you respond, you no longer explain. You embody, you stop fighting for your truth and start living it. And suddenly their opinions lose their gravity, the noise fades, the misunderstandings no longer cut as deep. You start to realize the people who truly see you never needed convincing. So let this be your turning point. The next time you feel that urge to defend, pause, breathe, remember this truth. Silence isn't surrender, it's self-mastery. Every moment you choose not to explain yourself, you reclaim the power you once gave away. You step out of their story and back into your own. And in that quiet, unbothered strength, you become something far greater than understood. You become free. Freedom begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. But freedom isn't easy. It demands that you sit in silence while the world misjudges you. It asks you to watch people twist your words, to feel their cold distance, and still choose peace over reaction. That's the part most people can't handle. They confuse silence with weakness, but silence is the highest form of strength. It's the power of knowing. You don't need to prove what's already true, because truth doesn't crumble under misunderstanding. It endures. And when you finally understand that, no one can control you again. But there's something deeper happening here. The urge to defend yourself comes from fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of being unseen, fear that maybe they're right about you. That fear lives in your shadow, in the part of you that Jung said we hide from the world. Every accusation, every judgment that hurts you, touches that hidden part. That's why it stings. It's not about their words. It's about what those words awaken inside you. The pain of not being enough. The ache of trying to be understood your whole life. You've been trained to believe that defending yourself will fix that pain. But it doesn't, it feeds it. Each explanation tells your subconscious, they have the power to define me. And every time you do that, you step further away from your center. The truth is, you never needed their understanding to be whole. You only needed your own acceptance. Because once you make peace with your shadow, no one can use it against you. There's a quiet transformation that happens when you stop reacting. You begin to see that most people don't attack you because they hate you. They attack you because they don't understand themselves. They see in you what they deny in themselves. Their criticism is just projection. Their anger is misdirection. And when you refuse to defend, when you stay grounded, you hold up a mirror to their own confusion. That's why silence is so powerful. It forces others to face what they've been avoiding. This isn't passivity. This is mastery. Stillness isn't the absence of power. It's the presence of control. When you stay calm in the storm, you change the energy in the room. People start to feel your strength without you saying a word. You're not trying to win anymore because you already have. The victory is internal. It's in the way your heart stops racing, the way your mind stops replaying the argument, the way you stop needing them to agree. That's what real peace feels like. But don't mistake peace for comfort. This path will test you. You'll want to defend yourself. You'll want to speak. You'll want to be heard. And that's when the real battle begins. Not with them, but with yourself. Because every reaction you withhold, every silence you choose is a declaration. I am no longer at war with who I am. That's where transformation begins. That's where self-mastery is born. You start to realize that being misunderstood isn't a curse, it's a filter. The wrong people will fall away. The ones meant to walk beside you will stay. Not because you explained yourself, but because your energy spoke louder than your words. You stop chasing validation and start attracting alignment. The right people don't need you to defend yourself. They just get it. And that's when life begins to shift. You stop living for their approval and start living from your truth. You stop fighting for peace and start becoming it. Every misunderstanding becomes a test of your awareness. Every judgment becomes an opportunity to choose stillness over chaos. And slowly, the noise around you loses its grip. The power you once gave away comes back home. The energy you spent explaining, proving, defending, it all returns to you. You stand taller, breathe deeper, think clearer. The world starts to notice. Not because you said more, but because you needed to say less. Your silence becomes magnetic. Your presence becomes undeniable. And when that happens, something inside you changes forever. You realize you never had to defend yourself to be respected. You only had to stop defending yourself to be free. The world doesn't shape you anymore. You shape it. With your stillness, with your truth, with your calm refusal to fight battles that were never yours. Because the moment you stop defending yourself, you become untouchable. Untouchable. That's what you become when you no longer need to explain yourself to anyone. But untouchable doesn't mean emotionless. It means you've learned how to hold your center while the world tries to pull you apart. It means your peace is no longer negotiable. You don't give people the power to define your worth. You don't let their opinions decide how you feel about yourself. Because deep down, you finally understand, most people aren't judging you, they're projecting their own fears onto you. They're reacting to their own insecurities, not your truth. But here's the part that changes everything. Once you stop defending yourself, you begin to see how much of your life was spent reacting. Every apology you didn't owe, every argument that drained you, every night you couldn't sleep, replaying words that never should have mattered. You start to realize how much energy you've wasted trying to prove something to people who were never really listening. And that realization hurts. It shakes you, but it also sets you free. Because now you see clearly, you see that defending yourself was never about truth. It was about fear, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone, fear of being seen and rejected anyway. The truth is, you can't outrun that fear. You face it by standing still, by letting the misunderstanding exist without trying to fix it, by letting silence speak for you. Because silence is not the absence of an answer. It's the presence of strength. It's the quiet declaration that says, I don't need your approval to exist. And when you reach that level of calm, something inside you shifts forever. You stop chasing validation and start radiating conviction. You stop seeking permission and start embodying power. Every person who has ever transformed their life has had to face this moment, the moment when they were misunderstood, criticized, or doubted. And they stayed silent anyway, because silence is the crucible where the ego burns away and the soul takes over. It's where you stop reacting to the world and start creating it. You stop living in defense and start living in purpose. And that's when everything begins to move. The right opportunities appear. The right people are drawn to you. Not because you fought for attention, but because your energy became undeniable. This is the power Jung was pointing to. The moment you stop fighting the shadows outside you and start confronting the shadows within. Every attack you face is an invitation to grow. Every judgment is a mirror, showing you where you still seek validation. Every misunderstanding is a test of how deeply you know yourself. The world stops being your enemy and becomes your teacher. You start to see that the people who challenge you are just catalysts for your evolution, and that realization turns pain into power. But this power requires courage. The courage to be quiet when you want to scream. The courage to be still when every part of you wants to react. The courage to trust that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It only needs to stand, and when you can stand in your truth without defending it, the world bends around your stillness. People feel it. They sense something unshakable in you, something rare, something real. That's the kind of strength that can't be taught. It's forged in silence, forged in patience, forged in the moments you could have defended yourself but didn't. Every time you choose peace over reaction, you build a layer of power that no one can touch. You become grounded, immovable, magnetic. You start leading with energy instead of words. And that's when life stops happening to you and starts responding to you. So the next time someone questions your motives, doubts your heart, or twists your truth, don't rush to defend. Don't beg to be understood. Just breathe. Remember that every reaction is a choice, and every silence is a statement. Stand still long enough, and the truth will reveal itself without your help. The noise will fade, the chaos will pass, and you'll still be standing. Calm, centered, free. Because the ones who truly know you never needed an explanation. And the ones who demand one were never meant to understand. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them build their stories. You don't owe them your energy. You owe yourself your peace. And that peace becomes your power. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. The kind that doesn't shout, it resonates. That's where real strength lives. Not in defense, but in knowing. Not in reaction, but in presence. And once you find that within yourself, nothing and no one can ever take it from you again. Freedom isn't quiet because it's empty. It's quiet because it's complete. When you stop defending yourself, you step out of the noise of the world and into the rhythm of your own truth. That silence becomes sacred. It becomes your anchor when everything around you tries to shake your peace. The same people who once fed on your reactions will start to feel the distance. They'll sense something they can't touch anymore. And that's the point. You've stopped being available to their chaos. You've stopped feeding the energy that used to drain you. You've reclaimed your presence. But there's something you must understand. Silence isn't just a response. It's a mirror. It shows you what still lives inside you. Every time you stay silent, the part of you that once needed validation begins to fade. The wounds that once demanded attention start to close. You begin to see how much of your pain came from trying to be understood by people who were never capable of understanding you. And when that truth hits, it burns, but it also liberates. You stop begging the world to see you, and you start seeing yourself. The more you grow, the less explaining you'll do. You'll learn that real transformation doesn't need witnesses. It happens quietly, in the moments no one sees. When you stop defending your worth, you create space for it to expand. When you stop chasing validation, you start attracting respect. When you stop reacting, you start leading. That's the paradox of power. Those who have it don't need to prove it. They carry it in the way they walk, the way they breathe, the way they exist. But don't mistake this silence for detachment. It's not about not caring. It's about caring deeply, but directing that care inward first. It's choosing to pour energy into growth instead of reaction. It's realizing that your peace is not something you earn from others. It's something you decide to protect, no matter what. Every moment you hold your ground. Every time you choose stillness over chaos, you reinforce a truth the world can't shake. You belong to yourself. You've spent too long apologizing for being misunderstood, too long trying to correct the story someone else told about you. But every story they tell dies in their mouth the moment you stop feeding it with defense. The truth doesn't need your help to survive. It only needs your silence to breathe. And that silence, over time, becomes your signature. It's the energy of someone who no longer seeks to be accepted because they've already accepted themselves. There's an unspoken strength in that kind of presence. People feel it before you say a word. They don't know why they respect you, they just do. It's because you no longer operate from fear. You no longer need the world to agree with you for your truth to exist. You've stopped being reactive and started being intentional. And intention is magnetic. It draws what's real and repels what isn't. But to live like this, you must be willing to lose the need to win. You must be willing to let go of being right, to surrender the last word, to let others misunderstand you completely, because your peace is worth more than your ego. Every battle avoided is energy saved. Every silence kept is power stored. And one day, you'll look back and realize how much lighter life became when you stopped trying to control how others saw you. The world will always have opinions. Let it. The only truth that matters is the one you carry within. That's the truth that can't be taken, twisted, or destroyed. That's the truth that endures when the noise fades, when the crowds disappear, when only you remain. And in that silence, you'll discover something you've been searching for your entire life. Not understanding, not validation, but peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. The kind that comes from finally knowing who you are. You'll stand there, calm, certain, untouchable, and you'll realize you've become everything you were trying to defend. You've become your own proof. So don't defend yourself. Don't chase explanations. Don't waste another breath trying to be seen. You are seen by the only one who truly matters. You. Let that be enough. Let that be everything. Because once you live from that truth, the world will have no choice but to feel it. And when they do, they'll understand. Not because you explained yourself, but because your silence spoke louder than any defense ever could. There's a moment when silence stops being something you choose and becomes something you are. You no longer have to remind yourself to stay calm, to hold back, to let go. It just happens. Because you've crossed a line inside yourself, a point of no return where peace matters more than pride. You stop needing to fight to feel seen. You stop needing to win to feel worthy. You begin to understand that real power doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It's the quiet certainty that comes from knowing nothing outside. You can touch what's already whole within you. But this isn't the kind of strength the world teaches. The world tells you to respond, to clap back, to prove them wrong. It tells you to protect your image at all costs, to make sure everyone knows your side of the story. But all that noise does is keep you small. Because every time you defend yourself, you're still giving them access to you. You're still letting their opinion decide your energy. You're still letting their misunderstanding pull you out of alignment. The moment you choose silence, you take that power back. You reclaim your focus. You protect your frequency. You decide what's worth your attention and what isn't. And that's where transformation begins. Most people never reach that place. They stay trapped in the cycle of reaction, always explaining, always arguing, always exhausted. They don't realize that the battle they're fighting isn't with others, it's with their own fear. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of not being enough. The fear that maybe, just maybe, the criticism was right. But that's the illusion. Because the truth is, no one outside of you has the authority to define you. Their words can only hurt if you believe them. Their judgment only sticks if you think it might be true. Once you understand that, their power dissolves. This is why silence is dangerous to those who thrive on control. It exposes them. When you no longer defend yourself, you remove the fuel from their fire. They start to unravel because they can't feed off your reaction anymore. You're no longer part of their narrative. You've outgrown it. You've risen above the level where their noise exists, and in that quiet, you begin to see how little of their chaos was ever about you. It was always about them, their insecurity, their pain, their projections, and you were just the mirror that reflected what they refused to face. That realization changes everything. You stop taking things personally. You stop wasting energy on battles that don't deserve your presence. You start protecting your peace like it's sacred, because it is. And every time you do, you grow stronger. You stop needing closure from others because you've already found it within yourself. You stop explaining your worth because you've already felt it. That's the level of power Jung spoke of. The integration of shadow and light, when nothing they say can shake you, because you've already faced every part of yourself and accepted it. But to reach that point, you must be willing to lose things. You'll lose people who can't handle your calm. You'll lose connections that depended on your reaction. You'll lose versions of yourself that only existed to please others. And yes, it will hurt. Growth always does. But the pain you feel now is nothing compared to the peace that's waiting for you. Because on the other side of that loss is freedom. The kind that no one can give you, and no one can take away. This is the awakening of someone who no longer explains, someone who no longer chases, someone who has finally learned that defending yourself is the language of the unhealed, and silence is the language of the self-assured. You start to walk differently, speak differently, move differently. People notice it. They can't name it, but they feel it. The quiet gravity of someone who's found themselves. And that's where life begins to shift. Opportunities flow toward peace. Energy aligns with certainty. The world starts to respond to you not because you're louder, but because you're clear. You no longer vibrate at the level of conflict. You've become something greater, anchored, awake, untouchable. And when you reach that place, you understand Jung's greatest lesson wasn't about others at all. It was about you, about remembering that you never needed to defend who you are. You only needed to remember it, because the one who knows themselves has nothing left to prove and everything left to become.